Hello, and warm greetings to a series of presentations that for now I'm titling The Introduction to Bible Geometry, the Template of Our Universe. Hopefully these terms will become more apparent as we go along and explore this often neglected subject in the scriptures. Maybe you don't have an interest in this or think you're bad at numbers and geometry and that kind of thing, but hopefully this can be a jumping off point to get some more people interested in this. The great challenge I had when putting these things together was the total lack of information on this subject that I could find online or have ever heard anybody talk about. It seems to be totally unknown, but as I've explored more of it, I've come to understand that it is a very important subject, and we ought not to be lacking in any area of our understanding of the Bible. So, if you didn't know, there is geometry in the Bible. There are many measures given, and that word is very important in many places. But there are five major things measured in the Bible. It's Noah's Ark, the tabernacle in the wilderness, Solomon's temple, Ezekiel's city, or temple, whichever you prefer, and the New Jerusalem of Revelation. You're going to have to take my word for it right now, but we'll see as we go along. All these things are related. They're all of one pattern, and they all describe something quite fascinating. I'm eager to apologize for the quality of this presentation, but I'm going to limit myself a bit in it. This is my first time trying these things or attempting to do an online presentation of any kind, so please bear with me if we come across any issues in audio or video, and as I'm talking out of my own head, I am very likely to get something wrong or say something out of place, and I'll warn you that you can get absolutely nothing out of anything I'm about to say without studying your Bible. It is very important to have the book, have it open, and be thinking and reading about the passages that I'm going to share in these presentations. Without having context of what's being said around this, you may totally miss the idea of the author and what I'm trying to bring out of it. So don't take my word for it. Go read it for yourself, and that should help you see what I'm getting at the very least. Also, given that these next five presentations are introductions to the subject, I could just launch right in and start talking about Noah's Ark and the measures used and why it's significant, but that wouldn't do you any good if you didn't know what I was talking about. So we're going to use these introductory lessons to define our terms and get an idea of the context of language used when the Bible starts talking about measurements. I feel that that may be part of where the ignorance comes from on these things is people read over the measurements of these things in the Bible, but they don't often stop to contemplate what it's referring to or what relationship the measures have to one another. And as such, these introductory presentations are not what I would call total Bible studies. I've included a lot of information from our culture and other things you hear about when we talk about measurements that I'm just personally interested in. So there's a fair warning that this is not specifically a Bible study until we get to talking about the things measured in themselves. But that being said, the information I've included for a reason because when I learned it, it helped me to get a better idea of what the Bible was referring to. And I think we've got all of our boilerplates out of the way, and let's begin. First question we have to ask is, why are the measures important? And if you've ever read Ezekiel, you've come to the chapters 40 and onward and said, man, there is a lot of measurement taking place. And I was in that same position. And the first time I ever read it, I said to myself, okay, one day I'm going to sit down and I'm going to draw this out and I'm going to figure out exactly what he's referring to and what he's getting at. And these next two verses are great examples of that. Thou son of man, show the house to the house of Israel, that they may be ashamed of their iniquities, and let them measure the pattern. And if they be ashamed of all that they have done, show them the form of the house, and the fashion thereof, and the goings out thereof, and the comings in thereof, and all the forms thereof, and all the ordinance thereof, and all the forms thereof, and all the laws thereof, and write it in their sight, that they may keep the whole form thereof. So something is very important about this temple-shaped city that Ezekiel describes in the latter part of his book. And notice the words pattern, form, and fashion. So he's being shown something that's a representation of a measure. But the important thing is that the house of Israel may keep the whole form thereof. There's something very important about not only understanding what this is, but keeping that understanding and having that as a part of our Bible learning. In the visions of God brought he me into the land of Israel, and set me upon a high mountain, which was by the frame of a city to the south. There's that idea of a pattern again. And he brought me thither, and behold, there was a man whose appearance was like the appearance of brass, and a line of flax in his hand, and a measuring reed. Now that's important, like I said earlier, when we start talking about the canon of Bible numbers. That Hebrew word is directly related to the Greek word canon, and it means, funnily enough, a measure. And he stood in the gate, and the man said to me, Son of man, behold with thine eyes, and hear with thine ears, and set thine heart upon all that I shall show thee, for the intent that I might show them unto thee art thou brought hither. Declare all thou seest to the house of Israel. So a part of Ezekiel's prophetic mission in his time was to declare all that he saw in this vision of the city temple. That was the reason, it says, that he was brought there. In Hebrews, it was therefore necessary that the patterns of things in the heavens should be purified with these, but the heavenly things themselves with better sacrifices than these. Speaking about the sacrifice of Jesus Christ, something in the heavens was purified with this, or the pattern of it was. Now that's going back to what we saw about Ezekiel's house, and David as well constructed a pattern that he gave to Solomon for his temple. Perhaps you know of this popular paraphrase, as above, so below. Well, that comes from the old Hermetics. It's been picked up by the people that call themselves these days alchemists, but it is from the Emerald Tablet. That which is above is like that which is below, and that which is below is like that which is above. However, they are copycats in a way, for Jesus says in the Lord's Prayer, Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, in earth as it is in heaven. This is a very common idea, and I would say main theme throughout the Bible, that the redemption of our planet is the earth in righteousness. And since we're talking about the patterns of things in the heavens, well, when you look up, you see stars. In Job chapter 38, I'm reminded of, Canst thou bind the sweet influence of the Pleiades, or loose the bands of Orion? Canst thou bring forth Mazzaroth in his seasons, and canst thou guide Arcturus with his sons? Well, here we are talking about the stars, the influence of Pleiades, Orion. Apparently Mazzaroth is a reference to the zodiac, what we call today the 12 signs, and Arcturus. And then the next verse. Knowest thou the ordinances of heaven? Canst thou set the dominion thereof in the earth? So this has been a plan of God going back at least till Job's time. Knowest thou the ordinance of heaven? Canst thou set the dominion thereof in the earth? Well, we are talking about thy kingdom come. You may be familiar with that shape. It's a circle, and circles in our natural world are far and few between unless you really think about it. But one circle that there is, which I just quoted from Job, is the circle of the zodiac. And it seems that the sun and moon, in their transit across the sky, they trace a circular arc. Now you may disagree with some of the verbiage that I've assigned to these two shapes here, but the circle you can think of as a polygon with an infinite number of sides, if that makes sense. As such, I've assigned to it the terms indefinite, undefinable, irrational, and that's because of the relationship of pi with the radius of this circle is an irrational number, boundless, perfect, whole, harmonious, and heavenly. And then we have the counterpart, the square. Interesting that both of these shapes have a sum total of 360 degrees in their construction. It is definite, definable, rational, bounded, measurable, cumbersome, and earthly. And at this point, you're probably asking where in the world I'm getting this, that the circle is a representation of heaven and the square the representation of earth, but this will be revealed in time, and I hope you'll come to agree with my conclusion. And the circle is the beginning of geometry, as all regular polygons and polyhedra can be constructed from the circle. And as we'll come to see, it is our foundation of our measures for space and time. Of course, God, we don't think of too much today as an architect, a builder, a measurer, but he is often referenced as a ruler. And the reason we call our kings and governors rulers is because they are the standard that us citizenry are supposed to compare ourselves to in order to have a just and righteous and hopefully noble life. I'm reminded of the Babylonians who once a year would take their king outside the walls of the city, and he would put on sackcloth and ashes and confess to the people all of the ways he had not been a good Marduk. That was their hero god who saved the earth in his story. But Job 38, God asks, "Where wast thou when I laid the foundations of the earth? Declare if thou hast understanding. Who hath laid the measures thereof, if thou knowest? Or who hath stretched the line upon it? Whereupon are the foundations thereof fastened? Or who laid the cornerstone thereof? When the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy." Here we see understanding is a part of these measures, and he apparently was using a line to measure. And it's strange that whenever we're talking about measure, the stars come up so often. Habakkuk, he stood and measured the earth. That is the definition of geometry. He beheld and drove asunder the nations, and the everlasting mountains were scattered. The perpetual hills did bow. His ways are everlasting. So something about these measures is untellably old. Of course, Proverbs, when he prepared the heavens, I was there, when he set a compass upon the face of the depth. That's wisdom speaking. And a compass, of course, is a tool that is used to make a circle. The Ancient of Days by William Blake. Perhaps you've seen this painting before. It is a good one to look at and think on, but all the times I saw it before I knew these things, I just thought it was a majestic image of God in the heavens. But there's a lot going on here. In Proverbs, wisdom talked about setting his compass upon the face of the depth. Well, there we have the Ancient of Days in a circle, which is this heavenly realm of light, and he is reaching outside of the heavens to the depth to set his compass there. And if you don't know, the way that you use a compass is by spinning it around a point in order to make a circle. So that would be God's creative act of setting the worlds in motion, in my view. And of course, God, being the ruler, sets the standards of Israel. And Amos in vision, "Thus he showed me, and behold, the Lord stood upon a wall made by a plumb line, with a plumb line in his hand. And the Lord said unto me, Amos, what seest thou? And I said, A plumb line. Then said the Lord, Behold, I will set a plumb line in the midst of my people Israel, and I will not again pass by them any more." So God there is showing his people what is, we could say, the straight and narrow way, maybe. Revelation 11. "And there was given me a reed like unto a rod, and the angel stood, saying, Rise, measure the temple of God, and the altar, and them that worship therein. But the court which is without the temple leave out, and measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles. And the holy city shall they tread under foot 42 months. So there we don't just have measures of space, we also have a measure of time. If you've ever wondered about the 42 months in Revelation and Daniel, please go to the latter half of the book of Numbers and look for the wanderings of Israel, which number 42. And it seems in the Bible that all of the prophets, before they're sent on their mission of prophecy, are given a vision of measurement. Zechariah, "I lifted up mine eyes again, and looked, and behold, a man with a measuring line in his hand. Then said I, Whither goest thou? And he said unto me, To measure Jerusalem, to see what is the breadth thereof, and what is the length thereof." A measured Jerusalem, how about that? Revelation 21, "And he that talked with me had a golden reed to measure the city, and the gates thereof, and the wall thereof." Ezekiel 40, "And he brought me thither, and behold, there was a man whose appearance was like the appearance of brass, with a line of flax in his hand, and a measuring reed, and he stood in the gate." So there he has a yardstick and a plumb line. Of course, Daniel at the feast of Belshazzar, the writing on the wall, and this is the writing that was written, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Parsin. And this is the interpretation of the thing. Mene, God has numbered thy kingdom, and finished it. Tekel, thou art weighed in the balances, and art found wanting. Perez, thy kingdom is divided, and is given to the Medes and Persians. Mene means numbered. Tekel, measured. Parsin, proportioned. And I have a suspicion that the etymology of those two words are the same, in that parshin and portion seem to be very phonetically similar. So Daniel says to Belshazzar, "You are numbered, measured, and proportioned, and you did not measure up." God's yardstick in all these things is the human body, believe it or not. And God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." And then to Noah he says, "Whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. For in the image of God made he man." but man was formed from the earth itself, and the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground. So it shouldn't be surprising, as we come to see later on in these presentations, that the proportions of earth and the human body are exact. That angel that was measuring New Jerusalem, and he measured the wall thereof 144 cubits, according to the measure of a man, that is, of the angel. So when we're talking about measurement in the Bible, we're talking about the measure of a man, that is, what part of your body can be used to measure this thing. I know cubits and feet and fathoms are common points of measurement, and those all have an origin in the body of a man, who is made from the dust of the ground, or, if you will, the earth itself. As Protagoras said, man is the measure of all things, and you're probably familiar with this image on the right, Leonardo da Vinci's construction of the Vitruvian Man from the writings of Vitruvius. There's a lot to go over here. The first thing that you'd notice is that the man in two different poses is in a circle and in a square perfectly. This is because your wingspan, when you hold your arms out to either side of your body, is the same as your height. That's also how we measure a fathom, though we're all different in height and in gait. Our bodies can vary as much as they want, but our bodies are always in proportion to themselves, barring some injury or crippling disease. So that Vitruvian man, one of his feet, and indeed one of your feet, it takes 6 of them to construct your height, and it takes 4 of your cubits to make your height. Now you notice that the square and the circle on the bottom, where his feet are, they have the same starting point. But up above, there's much more of the circle than there is of the square. This is because of an interesting relationship to the center of the human body. You can probably see that his splayed arms and legs are the construction of the circle, the center point of which is his belly button. When you are newborn infants, the center of their body, if you measure their length, is their navel. But with a grown person, the center of their length is their groin. That's where this square is from, and you'll notice that his height and his wingspan make that perfect square centered on the groin. And you can imagine if you saw a grown person with the proportions of an infant walking around, he would look a little out of place, to say the least. But you gradually grow from that circle relationship to that square relationship as you age. And I've often wondered about that because the navel is where the nutrition of the mother comes in before you're born. So that's in part of the human reproductive cycle, that's where life is coming from. The life of the fetus comes from there. And the genitals, of course, are organs that aid in the production of the fetus. I can't say that I ever wondered about Da Vinci's notes on the top and bottom, but I might as well show you what he says. Vitruvius, the architect, in his architectural work of the measurements of man, are in nature distributed in this manner, that 4 fingers make a palm, 4 palms make a foot, 6 palms make a cubit, 4 cubits make a man, 4 cubits make a footstep, 24 palms make a man, and these measures are in his building. If you open your legs enough that your head is lowered by 1/14 of your height, and raise your arms enough that your extended fingers touch the line of the top of your head, let you know that the center of the ends of the open limbs will be the navel, and the space between the legs will be an equilateral triangle. The length of the outspread arms is equal to the height of the man. From the hairline to the bottom of the chin is 1/10 the height of the man. From below the chin to the top of the head is 1/8 the height of the man. From above the chest to the top of the head is 1/6 the height of the man. From above the chest to the hairline is 1/7 the height of the man. From the chest to the head is 1/4 of the height of the man. The maximum width of the shoulders contains 1/4 of the man. That would be a cubit. From the elbow to the tip of the hand is 1/4 the height of the man. The distance from the elbow to the armpit is 1/8 the height of the man. The length of the hand is 1/10 of the man. The virile member is at half height of the man. The foot is 1/7 of the man. From below the foot to the knee is 1/4 of the man. From below the knee to the root of the member is 1/4 of the man. The distances from chin to the nose and the hairline and the eyebrows are equal to the ears of 1/3 of the face. Apparently I'm in disagreement with Da Vinci on 2 of the measures, that being the height to foot ratio and the foot to footstep ratio, but we'll go over those things in more exactness later. And of course Vitruvius himself says, in a temple there ought to be harmony in the symmetrical relations of the different parts to the whole. In the human body, the central point is the navel. If a man is placed flat on his back and his hands and feet extended, and a compass centered at his navel, his fingers and toes will touch the circumference of a circle thereby described, and just as the human body yields a circular outline, so too a square may be found from it. For if we measure the distance from the soles of the feet to the top of the head, and then apply that measure to the outstretched arms, the breadth will be found the same as the height, as in the case of a perfect square. Now, given what I said about the circle and the square being representations of the heavens and the earth, I think this is all the more significant. Geometry. You might notice geo, which of or relating to the earth. Of course, geologists, they study the rocky structures of the earth. And meter. What is the metric system? It is a system of measures. So geometry means something like a measure of the earth, or using the earth as a measure, or using the earth to measure. And geodesy is the branch of mathematics dealing with the shape and area of the earth, or large portions of it, which is actually where we get our kilometers and the metric system. There is wisdom in measurement, as God says in Isaiah, "Who hath measured the waters in the hollow of his hand, and meted out heaven with the span, and comprehended the dust of the earth in a measure, and weighed the mountains in scales, and the hills in a balance? Who hath directed the Spirit of the Lord, or been his counselor, hath taught him? With whom took he counsel, or whom instructed him, and taught him in the path of judgment, and taught him knowledge, and showed to him the way of understanding?" There's a lot of measuring going on there. Meted out heaven with the span. And apparently these things are related to judgment, knowledge, and understanding. The Psalm of Moses. He starts by saying, "The days of our years are 80 years and 10. If by reason of strength they be 80 years, yet is their strength labor and sorrow. For it is soon cut off, and we fly away. Who knoweth the power of thine anger? Even according to thy fear, so is thy wrath. So teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. Return, O Lord, how long? And let it repent thee concerning thy servants. O satisfy us early with thy mercy, that we may rejoice and be glad all our days. Make us glad according to the days wherein thou hast afflicted us, and the years wherein we have seen evil. Let thy work appear unto thy servants, and thy glory unto their children. And let the beauty of the Lord our God be upon us, and establish thou the work of our hands upon us. Yea, the work of our hands establish thou it." So according to Moses, numbering our days applies our hearts unto wisdom, and it leads to a righteous work being established. It's been about a year since I made this presentation, but hopefully I'm remembering correctly that this is a cover of a 14th century French Bible. It may not have been 14th century, but hopefully you get the idea. But this is God, or in the image of his Son, with a compass stretching it forth upon, what would we say, the earth that was without form and void. A chaotic universe he's setting aright. And of course the men of Galilee ask, "Is this not the carpenter?" And this is a even older representation of the same event. But Matthew has them say, "Is this not the carpenter's son?" Well, God being the creator of the universe, Jesus Christ being his son, they were right in both cases. Paul asked the Corinthians, "What? Know ye not that your body is the temple of the Holy Ghost, which is in you, which ye have of God, and ye are not your own?" That temple's a fun word. That beginning there, T-E-M-P, is a word part in a few English words. Musicians know what a tempo is, or something that is temporal describes something that happens within time. So a tempo is a measure of regular time. Temper is a measure of hardness, or to be balanced. Like metal is tempered, or a sword might be tempered in a forge. Also, people that are disciplined with their mood are said to hold their temper. That means they keep their emotions in a balanced state. To tempt literally means to test. And usually when you test something, you have a template that you are comparing it to. A template is a form, mold, or pattern used as a guide to make something. Going back to what we read in Ezekiel, it is very important to know that he was told to keep the form and the pattern of what he was measuring, and that is what a template does. So hopefully I have piqued your interest, and you will join me next time when we start the canon of biblical numbers, looking at basic shapes in the world. And when I say shapes in the world, that's why I've included this graphic. All natural phenomena, no matter how big or how small, use the same rules of geometry to construct themselves, and they are all measurable by those same rules. And as Pythagoras said, God built the universe on numbers.